We've all heard that argument, right? That CO2 is just plant food, and hey, maybe a little more of it is actually a good thing for farming. But what if that's not just an oversimplification, but a really dangerous one? Today, we're going to dig into the science and see why the real world isn't a greenhouse and why our food supply is facing a massive threat from the very things some people claim will help it. So let's just get right to it. Is more CO2 really better for the plants we rely on to survive? I mean, on the surface, it kind of makes sense. Photosynthesis, right? Plants breathe the stuff. But the story is so much more complicated because CO2 doesn't just show up by itself. It brings a whole lot of baggage with it. And here's the first number you really need to wrap your head around. A staggering 48%, nearly half, of all the CO2 we pump into the air is never absorbed by the oceans or forests. It just stays up there. It accumulates, building up, and that's what creates the greenhouse effect, trapping heat and fundamentally changing the climate our crops desperately need to survive. Okay, let's tackle this more CO2, more food idea head on. Look, in a controlled lab, in a perfect little bubble of a greenhouse, yeah, cranking up the CO2 can make plants grow faster. For a while, that was the entire argument. But as we're about to see, the real world is a whole lot messier and, frankly, a whole lot hotter. The science on this is pretty clear. We are way past any kind of tipping point. Any tiny theoretical benefit that a crop might get from a little extra CO2 is now completely, utterly swamped by the destructive side effects of the climate change it causes. That supposed benefit, it has become a massive burden. So what does that burden actually look like on the ground for the farmers trying to grow our food? Well, it looks like this. The same CO2 that was supposed to be plant food is actually supercharging our weather, giving us these brutal heat waves, biblical-level floods, widespread droughts, and terrifying wildfires. These things don't help crops, they wipe them out. And listen, this isn't some far-off prediction. This is happening right now. A study found that across Europe, the amount of crops we're losing to heat and drought has tripled in just the last 50 years. Tripled. That is an unbelievable acceleration of damage. And if we zoom out and look at the whole planet, it gets even starker. Researchers at Cornell figured out that global farm productivity is already 21% lower than it would have been without global warming. Just let that sink in. 1/5 of the food we could have had is just gone, vanished because of the changes we've made to our climate. And this isn't just about statistics. This has a real human cost. Because while huge agricultural corporations might be able to absorb some of these losses, small family-run farms are getting wiped out. They're falling like dominoes all over the world. They can't afford crop insurance. So one bad drought, one killer heat wave, and their entire livelihood is gone. So now, let's bring this down from the big, global scale right to your kitchen table. Let's look at the food on your plate. Because this isn't just about abstract numbers. It's about the very real fruits and vegetables we all eat every single day. I find this fascinating. It really shows how every plant has its own breaking point. You've got your cool weather crops, think lettuce, spinach. They start failing once you get above 75 degrees Fahrenheit. Our major staples, wheat and rice, they start to really suffer in the 80s. And even the plants that love the heat, like tomatoes, even they have a limit. So let's take a closer look at those cool weather guys. When the temperature creeps above 75 degrees, these plants basically panic. They do this thing called bolting. They just stop growing the parts we eat, the leaves on spinach, the florets on broccoli, and they make a last-ditch effort to produce seeds. For a farmer, that crop is completely ruined. And then there's the absolute hard ceiling. At 104 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 40 Celsius, the most fundamental process for plant life, photosynthesis, it just breaks down. The internal machinery of the plant can't handle the heat. It stops making energy from sunlight and it starts to die. Period. And if you're thinking, well, 104 degrees, that sounds really extreme, think again. Just last summer, the city of Phoenix had 31 straight days above 110 degrees. An entire month. These aren't some abstract future temperatures. They are here, and you simply cannot grow food in those conditions. But hang on, because the story actually gets even weirder and a lot more worrying. It turns out this isn't just about the quantity of food we can grow. It's about the actual quality of that food. It's a phenomenon that scientists are starting to call hidden hunger. So here's the crazy trade-off. When plants grow in a high CO2 environment, they bulk up on carbohydrates and sugars. They get bigger, but it's like they're becoming junk food. At the same time, the amounts of vital nutrients we need, things like zinc, iron, even protein, they all go down. And look at the list of foods this is happening to. This isn't just some fancy kale salad. This is the bedrock of the entire global food system. Wheat, rice, soybeans, potatoes. It's even affecting the grass and grains that we feed to cattle. This touches nearly everything we eat. So, what's the bottom line here? It means that even if, against all odds, we manage to grow the same amount of food, we would have to eat more of it just to get the same nutrition we used to. Any tiny potential gain in the sheer quantity of food is completely canceled out by this massive drop in quality. And all of this brings us to the final, really unsettling truth, the thing that completely shatters the idea that more CO2 could ever be a good thing for us. The outside world is not some perfectly controlled greenhouse. It's a complex, living system, and we are pushing it in a very, very dangerous direction. Because it's not just about what we're losing from our food. In some cases, it's about what's being actively added to it. As our climate changes, one particular nasty toxin is showing up more and more in our single most important staple crop. That toxin is arsenic. New research has found that higher CO2 levels and warmer temperatures are actually causing rice plants to suck up more naturally occurring arsenic from the soil. And rice is the food that billions of people rely on every single day. This means a higher risk of serious diseases like cancer and heart disease baked right into our food supply. And that brings us right back to the line that says it all. The outside world is not a greenhouse. You can't just pump it full of CO2 and expect better crops. You get extreme heat, you get drought, you get food that's nutritionally empty, and sometimes you even get food that's more toxic. So, we're left with this final crucial question. The atmosphere isn't a glass roof that we can just raise up. It's a ceiling that's pressing down on us, getting lower and lower, squeezing our ability to feed ourselves. So, if the world isn't a greenhouse, how do we stop that ceiling from crushing our food supply? Thanks for joining me.